Welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chiefs. Oh man, I forgot the plurals again. Chiefs Feelings, episode 11. Uh, I am your co-host, Chris Dorst. I'm the philosophy professor in the group.
And I'm your other co-host. Co-host. I always say cohort. Like I think I'm gonna I start to say cohort. I don't know. I'm your other co-host, Ajay Nair, and I'm the Chiefs fan and the psychiatrist in this group. Appreciate everyone following along. We actually have another milestone, Chris. It's again a smaller milestone, but we crossed 50 subscribers on YouTube. We're now at
Whoa.
55. So I think that number is significant to me because I don't know. There's this Allstate commercial that comes on during football games, and like it's the premise of the commercial is like you're not like other drivers. You're not a bad driver, so we'll have like a rate that's specific to you. And one of their examples of a bad driver is someone who's live streaming while he's driving, and what they say to him to like what they have him say to make fun is like he's like, hey, I'm out there all with all you, my 50 subscribers or my 50 followers. So at least we have more than that
Yeah,
guy.
and we're not even doing this while driving. I mean,
That's
maybe
true.
that's the incentives for how to get viewers are very interesting. I mean, maybe we should do it while driving, at least
Yeah.
for viewership, but all sorts of reasons we should do it while driving.
Uh, and so thanks for the subscribers. Please follow along on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts for the audio version. And we have now done some brand consolidation. So on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, we are available at the same handle, which is STCF715. Um, so that hopefully you all will keep following along as many people have been.
Unfortunately, Thoughts 14820 has now died, but maybe we will get some merchandise someday that is Thoughts 14820 themed once we make it
RIP
big.
Thoughts 14820. That's right. And we should, if there ever comes a time where we have merchandise, we should make a select number of Thoughts 14820 things without any context. And there'll be like 3 people that know what that's about. And that's it.
Yeah.
And those
Or
will be
or
the people.
maybe 55 people now.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Um, All right. And just so you know from the top, today's going to be a slightly different episode. We have a special guest on our episode today. That'll be interview with him will be running right toward the end of the podcast. Our friend from high school, Lonnie Hofmann, who is a huge Ohio State football fan. And so he's going to come on to talk some NFL draft from the perspective of someone who watches a lot of Big Ten and especially Ohio State football.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting, and I'm not going to be here for it, but I wish I were. So I hope it goes well. And Lonnie, I miss you and wish I were there.
All right. So had the draft. Should we start?
Yeah,
I think it's State of the Chiefs this time. I think
yeah,
maybe.
let's do it. Um, well, I mean, my first question is really just sort of giving you a blank slate, blank canvas, whatever you would like for thoughts about the Chiefs draft. I mean, obviously, there's the exciting picks early with Xavier Worthy and, if I can say his name right, Kingsley Suamataia, but I'm not sure. So, thoughts about them and thoughts about any of the later picks. I guess just in general, what did you make of it?
I guess first of all, I would definitely prefer a blank slate to a blank canvas. I'm not much of an artist, so slate. I think of like I could do a math problem or something. That's a lot
Yeah,
better. Um, So I'm actually really excited about this draft. I think this potentially could be a really good draft. As excited probably as I have been for a Brett Veach draft. The big Chiefs draft was 2022, and I think my excitement about this one kind of parallels that one. I think to start from the top, first of all, I recorded a short about this, and I've had some time to ruminate on it, but I don't have from a principle standpoint, the Bills trading back with us makes sense. We kind of talked about it with the Steelers not willing to trade Deontay Johnson to the Chiefs, and I kind of laughed about that. But part of that being that if you really want to move off a player or you really want to do something that's best for your team, it shouldn't really matter who you're doing it with. Like if you think you're making the right move, in my opinion, you shouldn't be like trying to avoid making a move with a certain team. But it is pretty funny that the Bills traded with us. Like, first of all, I think for me personally, it's funny because I was really scared that they were going to draft Xavier Worthy, and I really did want them to. And the other reason it's funny is the last time we traded with them, we got Patrick Mahomes with the pick that we traded with them with. So I could understand a Bills person just being like, I just don't want to do that. Like, and the other time we had a trade that kind of involved them, we traded right in front of them in 2022, and we drafted Trent McDuffie, which by all accounts, it seems like the Bills wanted to draft him. And the Bills even released a draft day video of them being really upset that we traded in front of them. And then they drafted Kyer Elam, who has not panned out so far. And Trent McDuffie was a first-team All-Pro slot corner. So, I mean, draft day trades involving the Chiefs and Bills have not really gone very well for the Bills. So I was just surprised that, I was surprised they didn't want to just take their pick of wide receivers at 28. And B, I was surprised they were going to trade with us. But I'm not anti the principle. I think they made a good move for the Bills. I just was surprised that they would be willing to.
Given the history, do you think does this give you any extra credence that this is going to be good for you? That like Worthy will be, I don't want to make a pun here. Worthy will be an excellent player that they'll regret having not drafted.
I mean, I think that independently, and I definitely hope so more because it would be hilarious. But
Right.
I don't know that them trading with us affects. I mean, I don't know. I'm just surprised that they wouldn't want him. Like because the only criticism of Xavier Worthy is that he is slight. You know, he's kind of like Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman? No, Devontae Smith. There are a lot of Devontaes. The Eagles wide
There
receiver.
are.
Devontae Freeman, I think, was a running back for the Falcons a long time
I
ago.
was trying to place that. Yeah.
Devontae Smith, the Eagles wide receiver, who I think is even more slight than Xavier Worthy, but similar build. And he's been okay, so maybe it'll work out. But the thing I think of Xavier Worthy as like a souped up McCole Hardman. Like he is like a similar build. He's really fast. He's faster than McCole Hardman, but McCole Hardman was not very good at tracking deep balls and was not really a very nuanced route runner. And Xavier Worthy can do both of those. So I think he could be a really complete receiver. I think the only potential downside I could see is that if he gets out physical, he's not great at the catch point, but when you can run faster than everybody, and the Chiefs, remember, are not really an offense that's predicated on contested catches anyway. So who cares if he can't make contested catches? Like our goal is to get receivers open, and Mahomes historically has only thrown to open receivers. He's not a big contested throw guy. So love that pick. Kingsley, I believe it's Suamataya.
Okay.
Kingsley Suamataya was that was one of those that like a lot of people in Chiefs world had mocked to us, but actually had mocked to us at 32. So getting him at 63 is very nice. It seems like he's one of those guys that has the entire skill set to be a tackle. He's just raw. So may not be ready this year. Maybe we'll be getting ready next year, but it does kind of leave some question as far as what our left tackle situation is, how much we believe in Wanye Morris. And we might just do what we did last year, which is pick up someone like Donovan Smith, who's still available, who started in the league before, and just use him until we feel comfortable about our young guys.
So are you thinking, can I ask are you projecting he'll be at left tackle? Is that the expectation or?
Yeah, I think so. We have Jawan Taylor, who's making quote unquote left tackle money, but I don't think the Chiefs really. Although I've heard that Andy Reid does differentiate left and right tackle, like historically, really like most of Andy Reid's tenure in Kansas City. I'm thinking Mitchell Schwartz came to Kansas City in 2015 or 2016, but his time, which was from whenever he came, I want to say 2016, through 2022 when he got or 2021 when he got hurt and ended up retiring. Through that time, he was our best tackle, and he was on the right side. And then we signed Juwan Taylor last year for a huge deal and play him on the right side. I don't think we're going to move him. So I think we're fine with either Wanye Morris or Kingsley Suamataya. Or if we're not fine with either one, we're going to sign someone to play left tackle, I think. So, yeah, I think I feel very good about those two picks especially. Then some kind of more intriguing picks we had later in the draft. We drafted a tight end who I think people are getting
Jared
a little...
Wiley.
Jared Wiley from TCU, who I think people are getting a little too excited about how much he looks like Travis Kelce when he came out, because he's not...
Not like facially, but but
No, like body build.
physically.
Like,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. So his measurables are very similar. He has one of those guys with like a huge athletic, the RAS, they do the relative athletic score is very high. He's a fast guy. He can get up the seam really quickly. He just doesn't have the like agility and route running that Travis Kelce has, which I think is what makes Travis Kelce who he is. He's just a lot more stiff, like a more traditional tight end. Now, Travis Kelce did like lose some weight and, you know, become like a somewhat smaller guy, but he had that wiggle even when he was bigger. So I think Travis Kelce in his first couple years in Kansas City was used in ways that that Wiley maybe used, but I think he's basically going to be a guy that can come in as like our 2 or 3 tight end. He overlaps somewhat in skill set with both Noah Gray and Travis Kelce. He's probably a better blocker than both. Well, I shouldn't say he's a better blocker. He has the size to potentially be a better blocker than both of them. And I think he can be a weapon, but, you know, no one's going to be Travis Kelce, unfortunately. And then the other like really exciting pick, I think, was our next 4th rounder, Jaden Hicks, who's a safety from Washington State. He is someone who I think of as like a more box safety. He doesn't seem like he defends deep or has that kind of sideline to sideline range deep as much, but he seems like, you know, I think the kind of reputation that Cam Chancellor had in Seattle, he seems like that kind of safety. Somebody who's like up at the line. He can play underneath coverages very well. He can fit the run really well. He's incredibly physical. Kind of Justin Reed plays that role for us right now, so there's a little overlap there. And Justin Reed I think he's possibly the most underrated Chief right now. He plays really well and doesn't get a lot of notoriety for it. So I think he could be maybe an eventual replacement or someone who could play with him. And maybe if he's physical enough, be even like a dime linebacker. I think, although we have Drew Tranquil, who's an excellent dime linebacker. But I think those top 4 picks are extremely exciting. And then we kind of took some flyers. I think Hunter Norzad, who's a center from Penn State, looks like he's going to be like a depth interior lineman. We got a guy named Kamal Haddon, who's a corner from Tennessee, who has the same kind of measurables we always look for in late corners, and somehow we always seem to get production out of them. He's a 6th round pick.
Are those like long arms and tall, basically?
Tall, yeah, 6'1", 200 pounds, very physical, long arm. His measurables are actually somewhat similar to L'Jarius Sneed. The one thing he doesn't have that L'Jarius Sneed had was like a really good 10-yard split in the 40. L'Jarius Sneed had that like short area quickness, whereas Haddon, for whatever reason, his 10-yard split wasn't as good, but his overall 40 was better. So he's more of a long speed guy a little bit. And you know, we really look for those big physical corners, and Spags knows how to use them. I think in most cases I wouldn't think of a 6th round pick as being much of an investment, but Rashad Fenton was a 6th round pick. He played for us for a while. We have Jalen Watson, who's a starting corner right now, is a 7th round pick. So no reason to think that he also couldn't be effective.
Yeah, somehow you know how to develop those corners even in the late rounds. So, back to just for a second, back to Hicks, the safety. Are you thinking they would keep him at safety, or are you thinking they would actually move him to a linebacker or dime linebacker position?
I think they'll keep him as safety. I think he's going to ultimately be Justin Reed replacement. I think what the hope would be is he'd be somewhere on the spectrum between Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu. Because I think Reed does the enforcer bit a lot, and he seems like the kind of brains behind the secondary, getting people lined up. He's not like awesome in coverage. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's a good coverage safety and like the kind of underneath areas, but he's not a ball hawk. He's not like picking off passes a lot, you know. Whereas Mathieu was more leaning toward the underneath guy who's more of a ball hawk. Justin Reed is the underneath guy who's more physical. Hopefully Hicks can be a little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice. And you don't think there's any expectation that back to Jared Wiley that he's like the long-term replacement for Travis Kelce or anything like that? I mean, another question that comes up here is about Kelsey's new deal, but maybe we can finish talking about the draft before that.
I think, well, I think he could be in that, but not in the same role. Like, I think what would happen is for the short term, I think he's someone who is effective enough as a tight end that we could lower Chelsea's snap count, hopefully, a little bit and save him for more crucial moments. I hope that Kelsey will mentor him a lot. And, you know, because the one thing that is really not a good match is Wiley did not on his college tape show a propensity for being effective in the scramble drill, which is very important in our offense.
You would want to be, right?
Yeah.
Although that seems like the kind of thing one could learn, right? I mean, just keep paying attention longer than you used to, right?
Yeah.
Like, how hard is that? I don't
Yeah.
know.
And kind of feeling where to sit. And the other thing too is just yeah, it being practiced. You know, getting used to someone who will be available. You need to be available
Yeah.
5 seconds after the snap. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wonder too if he, when they've talked to him, has shown the acumen that they feel like can be someone who can figure that kind of stuff out. I hope.
Yeah. So you think, I guess probably, I mean, when I look at it, the most exciting player is obviously the round one pick, but is that how you would gauge this too? But like, I guess like, how about this? Highlight three of the picks that you're most excited about.
Yeah, I think number one is Worthy because I think, and I hate to use like big names and anything, but I think he could maybe be like 85% of what Tyreek Hill was for us. I really think he could win on every level of the field. I think he's going to be a legit scary deep threat. And as long as his weight isn't a problem, as long as he's not too slight, I think I feel very good about that. I think, I mean, the only reason I wouldn't put Kingsley in that top three is just if like linemen are not that exciting. But if he's good, he's going to be extremely useful, you know, as a 4-year starter a 4-year, basically someone on a rookie contract who's starting on left tackle would be awesome.
Yeah.
And then I think number three right now for me is Hicks, just because we still have Kelsey. It might be a situation where Wiley becomes incredibly important in about 2 or 3 years, but I think right now Hicks is exciting because I don't know. I wouldn't mind us extending Justin Reed. Like I said, I find him to be really underrated, but there is going to be a little redundancy now that we have Hicks, assuming Hicks turns out to be good.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. Ajay's take on the Chiefs draft class. So you think this could be like one of those like ones you look back on, and you're like, yeah, that was a really good year. It's like, where's that from? There's a quote from some movie. That was a good year. I don't know. Anyway, but this could be one of those, right? Like a good wine vintage or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, one always hopes. We had it. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Good. All right. So, unless there's anything more you want to say about the draft, I was going to ask about Travis Kelce's new deal and what you think that might imply. Does it tell you anything about the teams or his expectations about retirement? I think it's for 2 years, right? And he's the highest paid tight end in history now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's, I mean, I guess the only question that comes up for me here is like, how close is he to like all time records for tight ends? Um, do you think he would want to keep? I mean, like, can he do it in 2 years? Can he set any of those in 2 years, or would he stick around longer for that?
No, he's like I think a little more than 4,000 yards behind Tony Gonzalez. So
Okay,
yeah, he wouldn't be able to do it in 2 years. Um,
really good 2 years.
Now I think he would be able to set. He might be able to catch Jerry Rice in some postseason categories in 2 years, assuming we make postseason runs like we have the last couple years. If we're able to get to the Super Bowl and play several games, I think it's possible. Um, but I don't know. Ultimately, my conclusion based on the contract stuff is that I think my base assumption is going to be that he's going to play 2 years. And if he stays after that, it'll be like a year by year thing where we're just kind of, instead of our current Mike Florio kind of speculation, it will be like true speculation every year about whether he's going to retire after this. After this year, I think it's fair to go into every season being like, is he going to retire? I don't think he's going to retire at the end of this one, but after this year, I think it'll be fair.
Okay, yeah. Um, um, and he's got okay. So I guess what you would want to keep him around both for like the fact that it's Travis Kelsey and he's awesome, especially in the playoffs, but also I imagine for his veteran leadership during early parts of the year too, right? So even if you're not hoping to play him a lot earlier in the season and save him for the playoff run or something, then still he's showing the young guys how to do it, and I think he does it as well as anyone. So who else would you want showing the young guys how to do it? I think is that how you see this going, like toward the end of his career here?
Yeah, I think so, especially because, and I know, and this may not be the way that he comes across at public facing, but he's actually a very cerebral football player. And I think that that is something that can be passed on. It's one thing you can't teach someone to be as athletic as you are, but if he can help our receivers and tight ends see the field the way that he sees it, I think that could be invaluable.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Tony Gonzalez just a minute ago, and it's just like it's crazy that the Chiefs have had some solid tight ends. um, is that just an accident? I mean, like it's not like the same people were involved in picking them both or anything. So, is it? Do you have any explanation?
No, especially because they're so different. Like Tony Gonzalez was a first round pick, former basketball player, athlete who really like came in and was clearly awesome from his rookie season. And Travis Kelsey was a troubled younger brother of Jason Kelsey, who had gotten kicked out of college and was clearly something athletically, but was a question about what he would be. And honestly, he was a head case for like 3 or 4 years in Kansas City. Like, I don't know that he took on like a leadership role until Mahomes came. He was still like as recently as he was the guy. It's one of mine and my wife's favorite clips. Like there was once where he threw his towel at a ref, like he was throwing a flag on the ref. Like the ref threw a flag and he took his towel and he threw his towel at the ref. And the ref didn't have a flag to throw, so the ref threw his hat as like a second flag. It's like one of the funniest back and forth interactions. But that was Travis Kelsey before.
Yeah.
So
Well,
he
the
took the long
passion was
road.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's good stuff. Okay, well, I have one other question, which is sort of more, it's less down to earth, or I guess down to the nitty gritty details of football. Um, but if there's anything else like more football related before I ask this one, let me know if you want to talk about it. I'm happy to do
Oh no. Let's see.
that. Okay,
I
so
feel
this
like
is just like a sort of general I guess problem that I had a similar kind of problem earlier in Ben Roethlisberger's career where like but I have it to another level with Mahomes, where it's just like he's so good, and he makes plays that are just like it just look like magic often. It's like you kind of expect it at this point because he's done it so many times, and there's a sense in which that kind of like it feels like it deflates or makes more expendable everyone else on the team in some way, right? It's like when someone else makes an amazing play, you think, well, that was awesome. I'm glad they did that. But Mahomes probably would have figured it out anyway, right? He would have done something magic in the end, and they would have pulled it out. Uh, do you have so two questions, I guess? Do you have this feeling at all? And I guess the other question is, if you do have it, what do you do about it, right? So, like as an external observer, I sometimes have it. It's like I have to make myself focus on how good the other plays are that other people on the Chiefs are actually making because I think in some way knowing that they have Mahomes is just like a yeah, but it doesn't really matter. They still would have won. um, so I don't know. What do you think about that?
I I don't know that I don't think I feel that way because maybe it's just because of the Chiefs heartbreak that's still like a scar inside from before. Like I I never am able to like really marvel at how inevitable Mahomes felt until he's already done what he's gonna do. Like I'm always surprised when I read the Chiefs recaps that are like, oh yeah, and once Mahomes did this thing in the third quarter, we knew we were gonna win. I was like, you really did? Okay, I was not there at that point, but okay, like
Yeah.
it's I'm very much somebody who is a like paying attention to missed opportunities person during a game. I'm like, up, we can't let him off the hook there. Or, this is the kind of thing you're going to be remembering if you lose the game. And we've talked about this on previous episodes that it is an active thing I'm working on to try to be more present and more happy and more appreciative in the moment because I feel like it affects your enjoyment of the game, but I don't know that I'll ever get to that point where I'll be like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll win." Like, it's like it's too much. Like I've just seen, like the number of times we've been up like 28-10 or 35-10, like lose a game, or I guess it was 38-10 against the Colts. Like, like you just nothing feels certain when you've lost games like that. I feel like even though I mean I think the closest I ever got to like really believing was when we played the divisional round against the Texans and we went down 24-0. And in the middle of that comeback, I just remember being like, this is wild. Like this is like I don't even know like we're going to win this game. Like I don't know. But the thing that helped, I think, was that we took the lead so fast. We were down 24-0 in the first quarter and we went into halftime up 28-24. Like it was
Yeah.
just bananas.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I just don't know. There's a long-winded way of saying I'm not sure that I'll ever be at that point where I'm like, oh, Mahomes would have figured it out. Like I think I can say that in hindsight, but in the moment, I can't.
I think that's good. I think that this is going to help you appreciate like all the other players and all the other amazing plays that they're making, right? Because I feel like the worry is that in some sense you miss out on that if you're too confident in Mahomes' ability, right? And I think I definitely toward the end of an Osprey's career, I didn't have that feeling anymore, right? We had lost too many games we should have won, things like that. Uh, that I think every play was valued, but I think earlier in his career, especially when it was like, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl every few years here, um, it kind of felt like yeah, like all that really matters is how Ben's playing, and everyone else can do whatever. um,
I especially remember from that stretch. I want to say from like the 2005 maybe to 2011 ish range, 2010. It felt like no matter how well the Ravens played, they could not beat the Steelers. Like that was one time where I was just like, they can do what they want. They're just not gonna like. I mean, some of those games, like the one where Palomalu strip sacked Flacco at the end, like there's just these games where it's just like the Ravens can't do it. They can't. That was really crazy.
yeah, and it also made it like all the more of a gut punch when they did do it, which was like you're just you go in at that point you're expecting like yeah it'll be a hard game but we'll win it because we always beat the Ravens. by like a field goal, basically. And then there were times when they would just like rip our heart out at the end with like
Yeah.
the one. I think you went to one of those, right?
Yeah,
At
I was
Heinz
there
Field.
for one of those.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
I don't know what was worse, watching Torrey Smith catch that pass in the end. It happened in the end zone I was sitting in too, or watching Ben throw a pick to Terrell Suggs on a screen. Both of those happened in the end zone, like because it was like inside the 20. I think the Ben pick, like they were both like right there, and I was just like, why? Yeah, that was
yeah,
tough.
yeah. That's a. I Ben got hurt right in front of me at one time. I think it was at a Chiefs game, which we ended up losing in overtime. Oh, that was a fun game. But yeah,
Oh, I remember that game.
20.
2009, I think.
Yeah, that sounds believable.
We were not good that year.
Well, we made you look good. um,
The only reason, the thing I remember from that game was there was a play where I don't remember who the running back was. That was, does that look Moelde Moore territory? Does that sound right? Like he could have been on the team, or
it's in that ballpark. Yeah.
there was somebody trying to block Derek Johnson, and he basically like kind of jumped on the running back and grabbed Ben around the running back as he's like up in the air and managed to sack Ben while like the running back was in between them. Like that play is one of my favorite Derek Johnson plays ever. It was crazy.
There's got to be like a helpless feeling for the running back. It's like, well, here I am, like a child basically between two adults. um, okay, well, that's all I've got for Chiefs questions. Do you want to take a break and then do some Steelers?
Yeah, let's do it. And we're back. So now let's switch over to the state of the Steelers. And I'll actually do something similar with you. You can have a blank slate or canvas, whatever you prefer. And what do you think? Kind of, I guess, to lean in the directions of overall draft thoughts and whether you feel like the Steelers improved, and if so, did they improve as much as you'd hope?
So I'll take the canvas because I am terrible at painting, and I think these opinions are about as educated as my painting ability, if you can compare the two. Anyway, I mean, okay, so my thoughts are largely informed by other people's thoughts
Which I
about
feel
it,
like we
but
could probably say for most things in the entire world.
that's true. That's true. I guess it just feels very, I don't know. I think I have like more first order thoughts about like the Steelers players themselves. And then a lot of my thoughts about draft picks or draft classes are usually second order thoughts or whatever, second order, thoughts based on other people's thoughts. Um, but yeah, the received wisdom, if there's wisdom at this stage, is that this was a really good draft for us. Uh, the two drafts now in which Omar Khan has been our GM have supposedly both gone very, very well, very excitingly. Um, I guess we will see in the years to come whether that's really true. But it does feel like we're doing the things that you would kind of want us to do, even if they aren't super exciting, like drafting a tackle and a center with the first two picks, and then getting Roman Wilson, who we did need a receiver, and we got we got a receiver with the third pick. I'm sure Lonnie will tell me that I shouldn't be excited. Uh, and then an exciting linebacker, and I think Peyton Wilson.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was Peyton Wilson, out of NC State with the fourth round pick. So yeah, so I think that there's stuff to be excited about. I think I maybe I can talk in a little bit more detail about some of them. So the first round pick, Troy, and I'm not sure exactly how to say his name at this point. I think it's either Fautanu or Fautanu. But I kind of think, well, we'll see. I will learn eventually how to say his name from the broadcast or something. But yeah, we would love to beef up the offensive line. I don't think the Steelers expected him to be there at 20. I mean, there's some clips of as Mike Tomlin's calling him, someone in the background saying number 7 out of 20 or something like that. So it sounded like they
Hmm.
expected him to be like the seventh, or at least he was seventh on their board. Um, so it's exciting to get a tackle. In some respects, I don't know exactly where to expect him to play because we currently have Dan Moore playing left tackle last year. We drafted Roderick Jones, who was supposed to be a left tackle, and then he moved him to right tackle last year. Um, and I think the expectation was that Jones would go back to left tackle this year. At least that was the expectation of some fans. And Fautanu, or however you say it, is I guess, played mostly left tackle in his NFL career, not NFL, his college career, um, which makes one wonder what we're doing with three left tackles. But I think someone pointed out that when uh, um, that who's the Washington quarterback? I'm forgetting his name. Um,
Penix.
yeah, how could I forget that name? Um, yeah, he's left-handed, right? So playing left tackle for a left-handed quarterback might be more akin to playing right tackle for a right-handed quarterback. So maybe the plan is to indeed move Broderick Jones to left tackle and then put Troy Fautanu at right tackle. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. But anyway, it's good to have very athletic players at those positions, and exciting to see what our line can be with them. And so then getting Zach Frazier at center, I think the intention is probably to play him at center starting, week one this year. But we'll see. I guess I can imagine they don't want to say that definitively yet. But that's it should be an upgrade, right? It should be an upgrade at two big positions on our offensive line. And Mike Tomlin's been pretty upfront about it. I think he was asked on draft day one or two of the draft. Um, you're taking a lot of linemen here. It's like, yeah, we want to roll people, right? So I think, yeah, I guess we're gonna go heavy and have a strong running game and build off of that, which I guess is what we expected anyway with the hiring of Arthur Smith. But so I think, um, yeah, you know, uh, it had been a while since we really invested in the offensive line. I think we did it last time I would say we did it was like around 2010 or so. A couple of years there, we were investing high draft picks in the offensive line, um, and that paid off. Like we had a good offensive line for years, and then we sort of didn't for a while pick linemen high in the draft, and now we're doing it again. I think hopefully this pays off again, but I guess we go through cycles of the line play based on where we draft. Um, I don't exactly know what to make about like Roman Wilson. I mean, he looks like his highlights are fun to watch. I think he had like 12 touchdowns on 40 some catches last year, which is a nice ratio. And he looks shifty. He looks like he should be a slot receiver, really. And so I guess the concern is who's the other outside guy aside from Pickens. I think that's the main thing you would wonder about with our offense right now. Who's the other outside receiver? I guess you could imagine Roman Wilson going there, but that's to ask him to do that in year one when he looks like he's more built for the slot is, I think, asking a lot. Now, Arthur Smith's offenses usually don't have a lot of great wide receiver production. Usually, it's like one guy. Um, so maybe that's the plan. Maybe we'll be fine with just like Pickens and then a bunch of other people contributing a little bit, and it'll be a run heavy in other respects. I'm not sure. Um, I would certainly feel better about it if we signed another outside option. Uh, that is another receiver from another team that can play outside. And there are certainly rumors about that right now. But again, there's been rumors about that for a while, so it's hard to know if it's going anywhere. Um, Peyton Wilson from NC State looks awesome. Like some of his highlights are really impressive and it's exciting. I think he's got pretty strong, a pretty significant injury history, which is why a lot of teams were not interested in drafting him higher. So it's certainly a gamble in that respect, but it seems like a gamble that you might as well take. I do think our inside linebacker position is already pretty strong. We've got Patrick Queen there now, and then Landon Roberts was good last year before he got hurt. So I think that I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but can't hurt to have another athletic, promising linebacker. So I didn't have many thoughts about the later players that we drafted. I can pull up the list here. We got a guard, Mason McCormick, in round 4. Uh, Defensive lineman Logan Lee in round 6, and Ryan Watts, cornerback, in round 6. I don't know. I pay more attention to the higher round picks, and maybe I should be paying more attention to these lower round ones, but we'll see later in their careers if that's true. I don't know. It seems exciting. Seems like 2 years in a row where people are very excited about the draft haul, which is good because I certainly remember years where they weren't excited and seemed like they didn't. It was right not to be excited in hindsight. So maybe the excitement is good.
I want to keep going on the draft, but a question just occurred to me that I feel like I have to pose now. Thinking about, you have a receiver named Roman, and there was another receiver named Rome Odunze, who was drafted at 9 overall. If you are a fan of ancient Rome and you want to name your child after, is Rome or Roman a better name to pick? I wonder what that says about the namer, whether you'd pick to just the entity itself or a member of the entity that you name your
I
child.
feel I feel like neither are the best you could do, right? If you're a fan of the Romans, I guess, do people identify as fans of the Romans? Who knows? Yeah, probably they do. I think wouldn't you want to go for something like a deep cut, like a
Yes, I like this.
Tully or
Yeah.
something like that, right?
Oh, I literally thought Tullius. That's really funny.
I think I think that would be what you would
Yeah.
do.
Oh,
You
yeah.
would want the people who know what you're talking about to see the name and think, yeah, right. But only them, right? You want to have
Yeah.
this secret connection.
No, this is the right answer. Yes, I'm 100% on board with this. I'm always for like subtlety. Like you want those who know to know, and everyone else they just don't know. It's fine.
Yeah,
That's great.
exactly.
Yeah, I like that. No, that's the perfect answer. Um, but going back then to after it's either Fautanu or Fautanu. I think made a short where I think I called him Fotanu. And I don't know if that's the reason, but I think it's the most disliked short we've ever put up. Lots of dislikes. so maybe that's part of why. But anyway,
That's good.
you're drafting Fautanu and then Frazier. And then McCormick. A lot of investment in the offensive line. Do you feel like it was too much? Do you feel like maybe you neglected something else? Or do you feel like the degree of investment was appropriate?
I mean, it does seem a little bit surprising we didn't take a cornerback earlier. Um, I guess we got one in the 6th round, but um, I mean, I don't know what I would redo. I mean, I just feel like we need another outside wide receiver, really. That's the main concern. And Roman Wilson is exciting, but not so much in that capacity. So um, I don't know what to make of that. I mean, and again, it's hard to know exactly how upset to be because I don't know what our offense is going to look like. But I could certainly just thinking about it in the abstract. We've got solid running backs, at least improvements at quarterback from last year. Just beefed up the offensive line. Pickens on one side. Got Fryermuth, who should be more reliable than he's seemed to be so far. And I don't know if that's the quarterback's fault. So it looks like we have a lot of pieces on offense aside from that other outside wide receiver. And if you had that, then honestly, you would feel like that's a fairly respectable looking offense, depending on how they actually play. But without that, I feel like it's just a pretty big hole at the moment. Um, we'll see what we can do about it.
Also, it
Um,
seems like the Steelers are going for a lot of Wilsons. Now that I think about it too, yeah,
yeah, there's like
quite a
three
lot of Wilsons.
Wilsons
Yeah.
in the last couple weeks here, months. Yeah. Um, So I don't know. I mean, linemen are not like exciting to pick, right? But they are. I feel like they can pay off um, in the long
Yeah, and especially after our like Super Bowl 55 debacle, I feel like you can't have enough linemen. you
run.
know, things can really fall apart if you don't have enough linemen.
That's right. Or the wrong lineman. Like if you
Yeah.
draft, well, we don't need to get into it.
I do wonder that, thinking about now that ostensibly the center problem has been solved, and maybe we'll see the legacy of great Steelers centers continue. Like if they're just like older Steelers fans that are finally able to like sleep at night, knowing that the center position is finally taken care of again.
Yeah, yeah, it would be nice if we're even. It doesn't have to be like anything on the level of, but just like a good solid center would be fantastic, right? Who's not going to screw up unbelievably badly, repeatedly in the same game. Um, that's all we're asking, or at least that's all I'm asking.
Well, yeah, that seems like a reasonable expectation. And then, so my last question comes from the fact that it seems like Troy. First of all, does it feel good to draft a Troy in the first round?
Yeah, and honestly, Troy, something something ooh, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, I didn't even make
it's
that connection.
not that dissimilar. Apparently, Troy Polamalu called him after he was drafted, but he missed the call because he didn't have his phone on him or something like that. Anyway,
Oh, he didn't
yeah,
think it
it
was
is
like a
exciting.
prank call or something. He actually missed it.
That's what he said. Although I
Oh,
could imagine being like, "This isn't real, is it?"
that reminds me of, I don't know. Did you see any of Bill Belichick on the
No,
draft
I didn't.
coverage? He was actually like really engaging. It was pretty fun. Like I am I'm not a huge fan of the Pat McAfee style show, so I don't usually watch the show. But Belichick was on, so I like had to watch some clips on YouTube after. And he told this story about the process of trading for Randy Moss, and it was like around the draft. It was actually after the third round of the draft. So if I remember correctly, they used to do the draft where they would do the first three rounds on day one and then 4 through 7 on
Sounds
day
right.
two. It was,
Yeah.
it was definitely not just the first round on day one. So I believe this was after round three, and they wanted to trade for Moss. And so first Belichick's talking to Al Davis and trying to like he basically said, I told Al Davis we want to trade for Randy, and he was like, I need your fourth round pick. And they were drafting the fourth round the next day, and they had the seventh pick in the fourth round, so it's early in the fourth. And so he's like, well, we haven't done a physical with him. We're gonna have to rework his contract. We can't pay him his current contract. And he said Al Davis was basically like, "That's your problem. If you want him, trade me the fourth rounder. Like you figure out the rest." And so he said he tried to call Randy Moss, and Randy Moss hung up on him 3 times because he thought it was a prank call. When he was like, "This is Bill Belichick," and he was like, "Who is this?" Like, and then it took that much, and then they finally got him to like fly, get to New England at 8 in the morning. They did a quick physical. They reworked his contract by 10. The draft started at noon, and so they got the trade in and everything for him.
Wow,
But
that is a condensed timeline there. That's cool.
the way he described the physical was Belichick like took his forehead and he like felt another guy's hand. He's like, all right, not too. All right, you're good. You're good.
I would like to. I'm going to look that up because Bill Belichick being engaging is. I mean, he's. I guess he's always been kind of engaging in his own way, but yeah, I would like to see that.
Like, but he actually seems like a good hang when he wants to talk.
Yeah, yeah, that's surprising.
Isn't that like I love hearing him talk about football. Like, what Patriots beat writers have said is that if you ask him an actual football question, he'll give you a very detailed answer. If it's more like a general principle, not obviously about their game plan, but he'll explain things to you till he's blue in the face.
Yeah, I saw a clip of him one time explaining like the history of special teams or something like that, and it was just like off the top of his head in a press conference, and it was, yeah, it's pretty cool. But I guess it's like he just doesn't have any patience for the sort of, I guess what he regards as more superficial sort of cookie cutter media questions. That,
Yeah.
That's what makes
And
them
he
grumpy.
seems to be exceptionally averse to any possibility of providing bulletin board material. And I think he views a lot of questions like that.
Yeah, yeah. Wonder how much
All
bulletin
right.
board material is a real thing. Anyway, that's a separate question for another time.
Well, to just one other thing, he apparently for his team used to like his exercise every day was to walk the treadmill, and he would just go through press clippings about the Patriots looking for bulletin board material for his team. So
Evidently, he thinks it's a real thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess
um,
that's believable. People get to that level and they're like, you gotta take yourself very seriously at some point to invest that much time and effort into this, and then you gotta take any slights or perceived slights very seriously too. So I could see it being a motivator, a real motivator.
yeah, it's kind of what we talked about several episodes ago about it's like sublimation of pathological traits, finding like a productive way.
Yeah,
Because like that is crazy if you think about it with like a bird's eye view of like looking, trying to find slights and trying to find things you can interpret as insults. Like if you did that as like in your normal life, people would be like, "What is wrong with you?"
yeah, that's right.
Um, anyway, back to my question that I started asking like 5 minutes ago before I derailed myself. Um, Troy Fautanu appears to have been a diehard Steelers fan. What are the pros and cons of drafting someone who cares about the team this much? Like, do you think it? First of all, what do you think about that? Like bringing in a player that is that big of a fan of the team, is that a good or a bad thing? Are there bad parts of it? Are they all good? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't, it feels like it would be a good thing. It feels like you want players who like in some sense revere the Steelers as an organization or their traditions or whatnot, and it's more likely if they've been a fan for a while, right? If they're a diehard fan, like it sounds like he is. Um, I don't know. You also kind of wonder if it would get you like a hometown discount in
Yeah.
contracts. But I don't know. Aside from, it's hard for me to see a negative here. Probably there's a negative that I'm missing, but um,
Like felt too much pressure. Like you're like so invested since you got like that childhood trauma part of it on you, like excessive investment that brings too much pressure.
yeah, I guess it could be that. But I feel like there's probably a ton of pressure at this level, no matter what.
Fair.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it feels like it's. I wonder. I wonder how much that's like a real criterion for them in their selection process.
Well, that
Like,
was going to be my
do
next
you put it as a?
question. Do you think that influenced the team at all?
I guess I could see it, right? Uh, in a way that I guess it's surprising as you asked the question. Like I never really thought about it before, but I could see it actually being like a genuine, or at least a tiebreaker or something like that. If you got two, certainly I can see it being a tiebreaker, right? You would two prospects that are otherwise very comparable. You go with the one that's a Steelers fan, and you wonder how much like what if they're not comparable, or like what if one is slightly better, but the other one's a real diehard Steelers fan. Like maybe that makes you go with them. I mean, maybe this is just crazy, but I don't know. I could see it. Um, I don't know. What do you think? Is that crazy?
I, I mean, at least based on what people say, like, because Brett Veach actually, I just read a quote for him being like, they were asking about his process, and I think he said something like, it's still like first and foremost, it's height, weight, speed, like athletic ability. He's like,
Okay.
even things like football intelligence and stuff still come second to that. And I was like, oh, that's because that's not how like Belichick's described, right? Like he's described as wanting people that are smart first and foremost. But
Mm.
I do wonder if a lot of this is still just basic. Like
Yeah.
we want to get the strongest, fastest, most athletic guy to play the way that we want him to play.
Well, certainly there'd be like ways of taking it too far, right? Like you compare someone that's not a Steelers fan with me, you're not going to draft me. Right? I hope not. Right? If we're doing that, we deserve to be in the AFC North Stellar. Um, so yeah, I mean, but I I guess right. So certainly as a tiebreaker, I could see it, and I guess the question is, would you ever use it as more than a tiebreaker between two candidates? Well, maybe. See the advantage. I think you texted me a video. Not that he's a Steelers fan, but Frazier when he broke his leg last year, like crawling off the field. This just brought this to mind. So I didn't have to use a timeout. Um, and like a lot of Steelers fans were showing that and saying, "Oh, he's a true Steeler," right? And I guess I do wonder, like, doesn't every team think that? Is there any team that sees that? It's like, oh, not a Raider, right? Like if you're gonna do that, you do not
Well,
deserve to
that's a
be.
good team to pick for that, but
Yeah,
oh, that's
maybe
funny.
that's right.
Well, that's actually a nice irony too. Like on one hand, you draft a lifelong Steelers fan. On the other hand, you draft a West Virginia guy who's like, I'm sure most people in Pittsburgh didn't like him prior to him coming to the team.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So maybe that is just counteracting the like. I don't know if he's a Steelers fan. Probably. Well, yeah, I don't know. You could imagine some weird story there
Yeah,
where.
they're probably the closest team, like
Yeah,
proximity wise.
exactly. Yeah. I don't know
Unless
how.
is he actually from West Virginia? I didn't actually think about it. I just assume anyone who goes to West Virginia is from West Virginia. I don't know where he's actually from.
I don't know either. Um, yeah. Well, what do people? Yeah, let us know what you think. Do you prioritize hometown fandom in your evaluation of players? Is that a stupid idea? I don't know.
All right. So should we talk about some general NFL topics?
Yeah, sounds good. Um, I have, I have, I have an interesting. Well, it's interesting to me. One for you, and I want to see what you make of it. Um, so okay. So here's the. I'm giving you a series of counterfactuals, and I want you to. So they're each going to involve. Here's the first one. You examine, Patrick Mahomes' career to this point. Take all the stats, all the like game by game performances, and all the wins and losses exactly as they are, but replace Patrick Mahomes with a different quarterback who gets all the same stats and all the same games, same age, just a different person. How and then so under contract for the same amount of time and everything like that. Would you be okay with that?
So I guess what's different about him? Just the personality?
Just yeah, him himself looks different, talks different, is from a different place.
Yeah, I think so.
You would be okay. Okay, this is gonna totally change. Interesting. Okay, because I was gonna
Well, I
go from
mean,
here.
I guess the only way I would say no is if he was like a bad person. I don't want to root for a bad person. Like someone who I
Okay,
feel like is like amoral or unlikable.
but you
So
don't feel. Go ahead, sir.
so to me, as long as it was a person worth knowing, like I genuinely think, however naively, of Patrick Mahomes as like a good person. I don't think I would want that change if the new person, was not someone who I thought of as a good person.
Okay, so maybe I was trying to like angle this in a way that to see if you felt any attachment to Mahomes the person as opposed to Mahomes the player. Um, and the way you're answering makes me think sort of no, right? But maybe there's a reading of your answer here where it's actually no, you do feel attachment to Mahomes the player. It's just that if you had a different person that did the exact same stuff up through now, you would feel the same attachment to them that you feel to Mahomes.
Right? Yeah. I'm attached to Mahomes the person because of Mahomes the player.
Yeah. Okay. Um, can't. So I was hoping the counterfactual would separate the sort of the player performance from the person, but it's hard to do that here. Well, let me suppose that we're take your attachment to Mahomes into account as you answer these questions. Can I ask you to
Okay.
do it that way?
Okay.
So given that, would you be perfectly fine, just like altering history now so that you have someone else that fills the exact same role as Mahomes filled, except it's not Mahomes. Still okay?
So, let me make sure I understand this. So we're saying now that like we want. So you're saying that assuming that I am okay with the Mahomes switch, right?
No, I
Then
want to reevaluate it by
yeah,
taking into account your like attachment to Mahomes as a
okay.
person.
So considering my attachment, the fact that I like Mahomes, am I okay with Mahomes being replaced and his actions? But he's doing different actions now as a new person, but
Yeah, the Chiefs
not in the
quarterback
form.
is someone else. Call them Steve. Uh, and Steve has all the same performances throughout history or throughout his NFL career with the Chiefs, same age and everything like that. You won the same games. You feel okay? Like, how much do you feel like you're missing the fact that it was Mahomes that did those things?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like it just depends on if Steve is like a likable person. As long as Steve isn't like a bad person, I'm okay with that.
This
Like,
is interesting. Yeah.
like,
Okay.
like I wouldn't want Steve to be. And well, maybe I shouldn't name any names because I don't want to call people bad people. But like, there are certain players that I'm sure we could all think about that you wouldn't want your quarterback to have their personality. As
Yeah,
long
that's
as
right.
Steve wasn't like that, I feel like if Steve, I could, because some of this is us convincing ourselves that this person that we don't know is a good person, right? Like, and we're very invested. There's a lot of reason for me to be invested in the fact that Mahomes is a good person. I could do a lot of mental gymnastics to try to convince myself that Mahomes is a good person. So,
Oh, I've done that.
like,
Yeah.
to kind of get to have someone who I could do all of that with and still not be able to convince myself. Not saying Mahomes isn't a good person, he may be, but like if he wasn't the Chiefs quarterback, why would I have any reason to even start thinking he is? Like, yeah, he has a foundation. He seems to say the right things in public, but like a lot of other people say the right things in public, and I don't necessarily think they're good people. So I guess my point being that I'm not attached to Mahomes the person because I think well, I am in the sense that because he's the football player, but I think there's a part of me that deep down knows that I don't really know him. And so, like, there's a part of me that's like, I don't think it would be rational for me to form an attachment with him because I know why I like him. Like, I know why I'm invested in him, I guess. I know why I know his name or care about anything he does. Like, and it's not because
Yeah.
of who he is.
Okay. This is getting good here. So you don't think you really know him though, right? You think you know just
No.
how he behaves in front of in the public settings
I think
where
I
you know it
want to
big.
think. I think I want to think I know him. Like I want to believe that I know him, but there's a part of me that realizes I don't.
Okay, so what would it be to really know him, you think? Like you see how he acts in settings where it's less public?
Yeah, I think it would be. And this is maybe a little hackneyed because I feel like people say things like this all the time, but I really do believe the way that I would evaluate someone is like how they treat people that can give them nothing, that don't influence their life at all, that couldn't make their life any better, that treating them badly would have no consequence. I feel like that would be a good way to, at least a start to get to know someone.
Okay, yeah. Um, this is this is cool. Okay, so this went in a very different direction than I was expecting. Here's what I was intending to do. I was intending to. I thought you would answer no. You wouldn't want to swap because like you have some attachment to Mahomes as opposed to this whoever else. Uh, Despite the fact, of course, that if you swapped, then you'd be attached to that person instead. But whatever. Uh, and then I was going to like slightly improve the career of the alternative player to see how much weight your attachment to the person uh, carries here. But it basically carries nothing as far as I can tell.
I don't know what
That's
this says
interesting.
about me, but
No, this is interesting because I think I would probably answer differently. I think I would. I mean, I don't know exactly, but I think I get more attached to the person for some reason. And do is that naive because I don't really know them? I mean, maybe I kind of think we do know them in some respects, right? Right? We know sort of a side of them, and I and certainly you don't know them like intimately, uh, uh, or you know they don't know you. But I think in some way, like you can do the sorts of you can like read on beliefs and personality traits in ways that you can do with other people, um, based on all the sort of public facing contexts in which you see them, right? So I guess I feel like maybe you do know Mahomes more than you're letting on, but you don't think you do. It's interesting. We
I
should continue this. This should be a theme, I think.
Yeah, because it kind of goes back to I really feel like as I get older, and especially I think I don't think it just has to do with my career as a psychiatrist, but I think it kind of started with what I started experiencing treating people. Is that I increasingly feel like life is so much more of a subjective experience than we all want to give it credit for. We think that there are a lot of these like fixed truths, you know, and I think that a lot of how people experience the world has nothing to do with facts. Nothing, because in my opinion, there are a lot of truths, but I don't think they actually inform a lot of what we do. We just choose to pick and choose the truths that we want to based on our subjective experience and get it to fit our priors or fit our understanding of how the world works and how we want things to go. If you want to dislike someone, you can find so many reasons to. And if you want to like that person, you can find so many reasons to like that same person. So I with that framing in mind, I believe that my desire to like Chiefs players, especially those that brought me so much joy, I feel like I owe him something, you know? Like he brought me so much happiness. Like of course I'm gonna like him, you know? Um, and I
Yeah,
want to be objective, and I think, for example, our conversation on Rashee Rice, I want to be objective. I want to hold Chiefs players accountable in the same way I would hold anybody accountable, but I can't pretend like I think I'm great at that. Hopefully, I'm okay at it, but I don't know.
yeah. I think I right. Uh, right. Are there right? Okay. So, but I want to push back a bit, and I know we have to take a break soon. But if Mahomes, like, are there real like where are put it this way, where are like the facts about what Mahomes is really like what the facts that if you knew them you would know him. Now, I think you kind of answered this in like how he treats people that he has no reason to treat well, essentially, at least for his own benefit. Are those the only like? Are, suppose some stories came out about that. Would you then feel like you know him?
Ooh, it's hard though because of the degree of distance. Because then I'd just be like, well, why have these stories come out?
Yeah, yeah,
Whose interest is it that these stories come out? Like, I guess I have a very, very high bar for knowing people now that I think about it. Because by this definition, by this path that I'm walking myself down, you almost have to be able to be like a fly on the wall and observe someone's life. Otherwise, it's impossible to know them.
yeah. So you want to know? It's like you want to know him in when he's when he thinks no one is there to
Yeah,
watch,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I guess I don't know that that is like the only time or the only sort of like is that the only one that counts, right? Like the only kinds of behavior that counts or what? Like isn't it rather that Mahomes is you know acts differently in all sorts of different contexts, and where the true Mahomes is I don't know. I don't know if there is such a thing, right? There's the Mahomes in front of the podium, and there's Mahomes on the field, and there's Mahomes in the practice facility, and there's Mahomes driving home from work, and there's all these different Mahomeses, right? I mean, how figurative do we want to get here? Because I'm getting pretty figurative. So.
No, I mean, even from a less figurative perspective of someone who I think I don't think that figuratively. I think what you're saying still makes sense. Like, I think because even if you're doing something for show, the way you do it still tells people something about you, right? And in
Right.
each scenario, some of you invariably has to come out in that, and so you're right that you can piece things together and put together some at least decent approximation of who someone is. But then here I am looking through red and yellow colored glasses, you know? So like I'm going to piece things together the way that I want to help fit my image of what I want him to be. I have no incentive to be objective.
Yeah, that's right. But then you still want to be.
I want to, but I also don't want. I think my biggest fear, if now we're like psychoanalyzing me, but my biggest fear is to think that I'm being objective and be wrong. I don't want that. So I'm never going to give myself credit for being objective
But the
because
other
I
way to
want.
solve it is just to be totally unobjective, right? To be totally partial and to know
Yeah,
it.
but I guess I value that so much. You know, I value the objectivity so much.
We got to
We're
take a
going
break,
back to
don't
the
we?
King Priam thing, you know, futile fight that we talked about on previous episodes, where it's like I am constantly striving for objectivity because I value it so much, while simultaneously understanding that I'm never going to get there. But it's still worthwhile. It's a worthwhile fight to try your best to be objective, in my opinion.
I guess so. I don't know. Is it worth it to be objective about everything? Like some things I could see, oh, yeah, I'm just be partial about that one. And so like in this case, like the way you like understand a person or like think that you the picture you form of a person, like, yeah, just let it be informed by by your Chiefs partiality or my like I've certainly let that happen with my Steelers partiality. It informs in many ways the sort of picture I paint for myself. Again, I'm getting very figurative here of of the various Steelers players that I've been attached to over the years. But I feel like that is like if you offered me like Troy, like take Troy's career and just replace it with someone else, right? All the same stats, all the same wins and everything like that. I'm talking about Troy Polamalu. Uh, but make it not like no, I want it to be Troy, right? Like Troy was like so like I like the guy, right? Like
But what if
I
this
feel like
other
I'm missing
person was
something.
better? What if they were like a huge Christopher Nolan fan?
No, no, that's not it. No, it's Troy. I want it to be Troy.
What if they were from Pittsburgh and had moved to Columbia, Missouri, and liked all the things that you liked? They had been to Coliseum Bistro and then been to CJ's.
I forgot about Coliseum Beast Show. Wow, is that still there?
No, it's. I don't remember what it is now, but it's not Coliseum Bistro anymore.
Yeah, is that Flat Branch now? It's been a while since I even like
No.
heard the name Coliseum Beast Show. Forgot
It
where it
was
was.
like up on Broadway, like close to Providence. What I used to remember. What was the name of the place that? It was like a popular like bar and grill in. Was it? It wasn't Shiloh, was it? Something that was popular, like moved there. I don't
Okay,
know.
not like Applebee's or something.
I mean, by
Oh,
now it could be. I feel like Columbia is different every time I go.
yeah, I don't. It's been so long. Get them there. No, I still want it to be Troy anyway. I want it to be that particular because like that it's like a fixture and like it's like a I don't know I don't know like a fixture in my memories that it was Troy and not someone else that was more like me or whatever. I don't know. This is cool though. I feel like this might inform like different ways of being a fan of a team. Right? Like I think anyway. This is I keep gesturing at this and I feel like sometime we should talk about like what's the justification for being a fan. You and I might have different justifications. Um, we'll
Yeah,
see.
and I think too, a different. I don't know. I don't feel like ultimately this is making me come out in a good light. It's like it's like a lack of concern for like humanity, like who people are and the actual people. But I
I don't
do.
know. I don't know. It's just different ways of liking a team, isn't that right?
This will inform because one of the biggest things that my wife and I used to debate was like, morality of people, like whether people are inherently good or bad, um, or neither. And I feel like we could have that debate at some point. As you know, as you can tell from my lack of attachment, you can probably guess which way I lean. But um,
I can see that.
anyway,
It's a kind of defense mechanism, right? It's like everyone is really evil, so I just gotta like cleave the person from the role they play, right?
yeah, and I think it makes for, in my opinion, it makes for a happier life because you don't, when someone is good, it's a pleasant surprise. You're not disappointed ever. If you're
Yes, this
ready
is
for people to be bad, then you're never disappointed. And you don't have to treat, the thing that I think is hard for people to understand is that you don't have to treat people any differently because you think they're bad. You can still treat them nicely because you want to be a good person, right? Like, so it's not like you're going to treat someone badly because you think they could be bad. You still treat them well. But if they turn out to be good, that's amazing.
yeah. We should get into this more because I feel like maybe I am in the like I don't know if everyone's I don't know inherently good, but I feel like well, not some people I have trouble with, but everyone you could like sort of understand. Not everyone, many people you can understand how they came to be the way they are. I do think that, and that feels like
I
it
think
makes them
that's
more
fair.
relatable. Right?
No, I think that's fair. I just can understand and disapprove of other
Yeah, fair.
Oh boy, this is not going to be a podcast that makes me look good at all.
I like it. No, that's perfect.
All right, well, let's move on to topic that. Well, I'm about to complain about something, so I might continue to look bad. But I realized when after the draft that I feel very similarly about draft grades as you do about mock drafts. And I'm going to make my case here and see what you think about it. I think draft grades are completely pointless. And the main reason completely pointless is redundant. I think that they're pointless. And the main reason is they give us no new information. Because what is it? It's just a confirmation of people's priors. Like we already have seen your big board before the draft. We know how you've ranked people. And so if someone picks someone ahead of where you think they should, you're going to give them a bad grade. You're literally just regurgitating the same information that you've given us before. There's nothing new that comes after the draft. You're telling us what we already knew, that you're high on person A and person A went lower than you expected, so you're going to give a good grade. Or you're low on person B and they went higher than expected, you're going to give a bad grade. It's actually no new information, and I will suggest a replacement. I think instead, I would like to hear your views on what was that team seeing in that person that maybe you didn't see? Why did they value them higher than you? We know you think that guy sucks. We already knew that before. But like what was the team seeing? For example, NFL teams clearly were higher on Michael Penix Jr. than draft analysts. Because rumor has it wasn't just the Falcons, but a couple teams were considering trading up for him. Whereas like a lot of people had him as like maybe a first round pick and maybe second rounder. And I think the same thing about the receiver from Oregon, Troy Franklin, and the receiver from Virginia, Malik Washington, except in the reverse, teams were way lower on these people. Franklin, people were saying maybe was going to be like a late first, early second. And Malik Washington was mocked in like the third or fourth round. And I think he went like near the end of the fifth or maybe even sixth to Miami. So like clearly there's some of these players that teams are valuing differently from analysts. And instead of just giving them a bad grade because they viewed them differently or giving them a good grade because they viewed them worse than you did, I would love more talk about what are these teams, what could possibly be going on in these scenarios that is making analysts that are dispassionate and separate. Maybe, well, they're definitely not dispassionate, but they think they are objective. They think they're objective, but that they're like separate from the NFL process, have one view, and people in the NFL process have a different view.
Yeah, I think I don't have any response on behalf of the draft graders here. I think I agree, and this is also why I'm not really sure how excited I should be by the fact that other Steelers fans or other people that evaluate drafts and grade drafts give us good grades here, because I mean, I think that yeah, it's just showing that like the Steelers' expectations aligned with their expectations. But what I want to know is whether those were the right expectations. I
Right.
want the objective opinion here. Um, and I don't think, yeah, I don't think just the grades are really telling me much. So yeah, I don't see it. I mean, what is it? I feel like in some respects, a draft grade is really just it's not telling you anything really about the draft, right? It's telling you about the grader
Yeah.
and not much about the grader even, right? But it's telling you a little bit about it. So it's kind of like a is this is a pessimistic angle. It's just like a kind of like egotistical like here I know you all wanted my grade. I will give you my grade here for each. Like no, we don't care about your grade, Pete Prisco or whoever. uh, Maybe we do. I mean, I don't, but some people apparently do because these things get read. I don't know.
I th- Even more like that. I agree with everything you said, but for some reason, and I don't know why, the part that really makes me mad is that they're giving us the same information they gave us before. Like it's like I'm trying to think of a good example, a good analogy. It's like if I told you like it would be stupid if something happened, and then that thing happens, and I'm like that was stupid. It's like well we know that you said that before that would be like the draft happening didn't change anything as far as the information we're getting from the grader. You could have inferred all of those grades based on how they ranked people and how people got drafted. You're telling us nothing with your draft grades.
Unless the only way it would change is if the fact that they were drafted by that team like influences your evaluation of them, right? But then that that doesn't really help, right? It's like oh the team like if you don't trust the team or you trust the team or something, and then that
Right.
influences how you. But that's not telling you anything about that's not then the draft grade is not evaluating the team. It's telling us what you learned about the team or something like that. I don't know. It's not. Yeah, I agree. These are
And
pointless.
this is like not exactly the same point, but it's another thing that kind of similarly irks me is that then what you get is you get these two sides that are talking past each other. Like for example with Penix right now. You have the one crew that's like this man is not a first round pick or not a top 10 pick because of whatever. He's a fifth year senior. He has had he's torn the same ACL twice, whatever reasoning. And in addition to that, the Vikings, I was thinking of Kirk Cousins. The Falcons signed Kirk Cousins and gave him enough guarantees to make it seem like he's their quarterback for the next 2 years. Why would you do that and then use a number 8 pick on a quarterback? So there's one side that's just basically like this is dumb, and then there's like the more analytically driven people that are like, well, it makes sense to keep swinging at quarterback until you find somebody. People thought that the Eagles were dumb when they drafted Jalen Hurts and they had Carson Wentz, but that was a good move. People thought it was dumb when Jordan Love was drafted, when Aaron Rodgers was there, and that was a good move. And they're talking past each other because there's not a lot of I think it ends up being like two philosophies arguing against each other rather than being like but what about any of that applies to this case, and like why do the Falcons see him as better? Like the Falcons, and part of this is maybe because I'm perplexed by the whole thing. I don't really understand, and it's annoying to me that we just have these two factions arguing with each other instead of having a discussion that can help me personally understand better. But like, well, and if it's true that other teams wanted to trade up too, like, well, then really, why? What are they seeing here? Like, what's going on? Rather than why isn't the big board ranking system like if I have Michael Penix as the 47th person on my board and the Falcons draft him at 8 even though they have another quarterback and a couple teams wanted to trade up into the top 10, wouldn't the natural reaction be for me to be like, why did I rank him 47 then? Is there something I'm missing? Like that never happens. It's like, well, I'm going to give the Falcons an F.
Yeah, this is another thing that's very egotistical about the draft grade, right? It's like, no, I saw everything here. And anyone who disagreed didn't see it right. Right? Yeah, I don't know. Well, next week we'll release our draft grades. We should do.
Yeah, we should.
That would be awesome. No, uh, only facetiously. Um, well, there, I think we're on the same page about this. Do you want to? Do you anything else you need to get off your chest about the draft grades before we move on?
No, I'm sure it'll come up at some point organically.
I mean, I wonder how much this is similar to power rankings. Uh, Maybe once the season starts, we can ask that question. Um,
You know what we should do as our weekly gimmick? We should power rank the power rankers.
that's good. Yeah.
Like, go through all the power rankings and rank them ourselves as like who we feel like has the best process. I don't actually care about their rankings, but who at least uses the best logic in ranking their making their power rankings.
Power rankings is such a weird thing. They used to be like I used to care, and then
Yeah,
it's like, oh, it's Tuesday. ESPN released their new power
yeah,
rankings. It's
yeah.
like I used to think this to myself, and now it's like, what? Why? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something now, but I don't see why I would care about like a one sentence description about this team. I just don't get it. I don't know.
Well,
Anyway,
and I think especially once the Chiefs got good, I stopped caring because it's like, for example, like it didn't bother me even in like November when all the people that came off the Chiefs were like, well, they can't win the Super Bowl. Because I was like, you know what? If we win the Super Bowl, I don't really care what you said in November. Like, all I want is for us to win the Super Bowl. I don't care what anybody says about the team during the entire year. You all can say we stink. If we win the Super Bowl, I'm going to be happy. I don't really care.
yep, yeah, I think that's right. I mean, maybe there's something about like winning the Super Bowl. Like, why is that exciting? It's because like everyone recognizes that. Holy cow, that's a humongous squirrel out the window. That is a How is he standing on that branch? It's like the branch is gonna crack. Sorry, I'm just. This is a. I guess I'm used to Florida squirrels, and I'm now in Massachusetts, and the size of the squirrel is just it's like a dog. Um,
And if they have like eat clam chowder out there or something.
I mean, they have to beef up for the winter, I guess, but
Oh, yeah, that's
uh,
true.
um,
Hasn't lost his winter weight yet.
yeah, I think that must be it. Be careful, bud. Um, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I mean, like the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl. I guess there's a question there, but like, why is that? Why is that? Well, why is that great? It is great. But if part of it is, if there's like a sort of recognition on behalf of the entire country that the Chiefs were the best team that year or something like that, then I guess I could see why that connects to, like, why power rankings would be somewhat exciting, because it is about how they're perceived by some people. So maybe there is a reason to. I guess it depends on why winning Super Bowl is awesome. But,
But there's no last. Like the thing that's nice about the Super Bowl is it lasts. Like even 30 years from now, people know who won the Super Bowl 30 years
yeah,
ago. No one knows who was number one on the Week 7 power rank. Plus, like it
yeah,
also ends up being a little more of a detriment. Like if you run the entire year as number one and lose, then everyone's like, "Well, that's even worse.
mm,
You were like number one all year and you couldn't even finish the job."
yeah, yeah. Well, like the Patriots of 20,
Oh yeah,
2007.
yeah.
What do we want to do here? Do you want to go to anecdotes, or do you want to do another general
We
NFL
could do
question?
another question.
Okay. I have another sort of. I guess my questions this week are very like I don't know. Figurative is not quite the right word, but anyway. Um, what do you? So like football on Sundays is kind of like ritualistic for a lot of people, right? It's like oh, I mean, there's different degrees of ritual here, like go into the man cave or whatever, or the she shed or whatever whatever one has, and
Oh, I
watch
haven't heard
football
she
all
shed
day.
before. I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, I learned that a couple of years ago. I thought that was good. Um, but like devote the day to it. I mean, that's one extreme. It doesn't have to be that extreme. It could just be like all the games happening. I'm going to be like not worried about anything else. Uh, uh, that, that's not connected with my favorite team or something. I don't know. Like, I just wanted. I was curious about like your take about why it's such a ritual for so many people, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I think it's a good thing for the NFL. I think I feel like part of the reason is the NFL has, whether by luck or by design, created like a system that lends itself to ritual. You know, like the games are on like the same times every week. Like it's kind of hard with basketball. Like you don't know what your team's gonna play on a Tuesday, or then in the next week it's a Wednesday, and then they're on a Sunday and a Saturday. You know, like there's a, you know, when your team's going to play essentially. You know, there's a
That's a good
little
point.
variation, but like you don't actually have to look anything up to be have a general idea of when your team's going to play. And that was increasing, that was more true back, more true, I mean, it tended to be the case even more often when,
That seems
before
like
they
more true.
added like
Yeah.
Thursday night football and all that.
Yeah.
But
So
I
you can
think
like
that
plan your week around it. Is that right?
yeah,
Like it's like
you
I got to
plan
get
your
my
week
work
around
done
it.
before Sunday.
Yeah. And you know, if you're a good team, you're more used to playing later in the afternoon or the Sunday night. And if you're a bad team, you're used to playing the early games more often, unless you're a West Coast bad team, in which case you're playing in the afternoon anyway. Well, I guess not for you. You're playing in the late game, but not in the late of the day. But I think that that's the start of it, that it just lends itself to that. And the other part is I don't know, because one thing I found when I'm getting as I'm getting older is that it's much harder for me to sit through an entire sporting event in many cases. I sit through, weirdly, I've started watching a lot more baseball, and I sit through baseball more easily, maybe because it's just like slow and I can do other work during baseball.
Well,
But like
Lonnie will be happy to
basketball,
hear this.
yeah, like he knows. I ask
Oh,
him baseball questions all the time now. I'm texting him being like, okay, well, if his OPS is like 850, what am I thinking? Like, this is good OPS? Like, that's the tenor of our
wow.
conversations now. Uh,
He's always been such a big proponent of the of baseball as the pastime of American pastime. Yeah.
well, you can blame T-Mobile because they started giving away the like free MLB.TV subscriptions every year. And so I could watch every single Cardinals game because I'm not in St. Louis, so they don't get blacked out. So I just watch all the Cardinals games on that. Like, uh, but yeah, it's. But anyway, I think, and we talked about in basketball before about how they go on so many runs. It's almost like there's no point watching until the end. But for whatever reason, I can watch like the Cardinals play the Raiders, and I will sit and watch that entire game. Like it, I mean, the Raiders is a bad example because I am invested in them losing because
Yeah.
they're in our division. But like, if the Cardinals played like the bad version of Jacksonville back in the day,
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
like I'll sit and watch that entire game. And I don't know how to explain that, but for whatever reason, football has that level of it is that level of captivating for me.
Yeah. I don't know how to explain it either, but there is something that's like you have artificial worries and artificial uh, concerns for 3 hours or whatever, or however long you take, as opposed to your real ones. And if it's the same every Sunday, it's the same time every Sunday or something like that, then yeah, you can like sort of plan your week about like, well, at least on Sunday from 1 to 4 or whatever, I will have different worries than the ones I have right now. Maybe that's what. But I think you're right that the having it on a particular day of the week is probably significant here.
And it's nice that it's like a short part of the year. I think this is where, you know, the NBA doesn't, you know, when you start in the end of October and you don't end until June, like you get kind of used to having it and you don't miss it as much. Whereas like football, you spend most of the year just missing it. And then you get it from September to February and then you're just missing it for the rest of the year again.
Yeah, this is what Christianity should do if they want to make a comeback in the US, right? Like Christianity season is say spring through midsummer, I don't know, right? And then it's gone, right? You don't go to church for the rest of the year. You only go to church on Sundays. I don't know. They can't compete with football, so it's got to be in the spring. I don't know. You can imagine a religion using this.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive because people feel like, you know, you want to be omnipresent and someone's like, maybe I should stop releasing so many shorts, you know? The only problem is not enough people actually watch them yet. Once you get popular, then you got to scale it back and
Yeah, then you
leave
gotta like
people wanting
make
more.
people want. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Anyway, that's all I have for that question. But it is I like your diagnosis there.
I have one more question that I'll try to squeak in before we go to our anecdotes, just because it's draft related. I'm curious on your perspective on the thought that, I've heard the argument multiple times that a draft system is unfair to labor, that every player should enter the league as a free agent with equal access to all teams, whether there's a salary structure or not. So what do you feel like a draft inherently is anti-labor? I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to say it's not anti-labor, but it's like unfair and shouldn't exist. And from both perspectives, from like the teams picking the player and from the fact that a salary structure exists.
Huh. I never really thought about this question before, which is just something indicative of privilege or something. But anyway, um, yeah, what is going on? I mean, I guess very naively, and take this with like 18 grains of salt. But if it is um, sort of exploitative, I mean, maybe you could look at it in you can't look at it in a vacuum though, right? You gotta look like the fact that the way the draft is set up is actually designed to encourage the kind of parity that makes the league so exciting, right? And so that's what provides the engagement that makes this a sport that makes money, that players make money playing, right? So I don't know. I mean, maybe them overstating how much the draft contributes to the parity and the excitement of the league, but insofar as it does, I feel like you have to take that into account when you're evaluating whether it's exploitative of the labor or not. Um, that's my off the top of my head naive opinion about this. What do you think that's totally misguided? Because it probably is.
Well, I don't think it's totally misguided, but we do have, like, soccer does not have a draft and is incredibly popular.
Mm,
And there,
yeah.
although soccer, the thing is that's changing is like historically there wasn't a lot of parity because there were some teams that were significantly richer than other teams. But now all those teams are being bought by like Saudi Arabian billionaires, and so all the teams are becoming rich in some way or another, or at least like more teams are getting more money because it's just so lucrative to as a business model, just like NFL teams and all that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It, I do think that it is ultimately on a large scale generally misguided to try to apply rules of life in general to sports. Like people being like, well, if some P2 guys get in a fight on the field, should one charge the other with assault? Or like, even the idea of like, well, they just kick and throw a ball. Like, what's the point? Which we'll have an entire conversation about that too. But like, how come no one goes to a movie and is
That'll be
like,
a
well,
fun
they're just
conversation.
playing pretend? Like, no one goes to a movie and is like, why are you just sitting and watching people play pretend? Like, so
Yeah.
why do you care if somebody's kicking or throwing a ball? Like, I don't know.
I've got a
Anyway.
theory about this movie question. We should also talk about that later.
Oh yeah, we should.
We have some
Or
good
like
questions.
someone's just singing a song and you're willing to pay them. Taylor Swift's worth $1.1 billion, and no one cares about that. But they're like, why do players that throw a ball make money? Like it's like you're just singing songs. Like, why is that any more like of a productive thing in society than playing a game? Like, anyway. But yeah, so I mean, I do think that sports kind of exist in their own ecosystem, and so it is a little difficult to judge them on societal standards. But I do think it's kind of a compelling argument that it's, especially in football, where it seems like situation does kind of determine like how much it determines as a successful player. Hard to say, but it seems to be a pretty big influence. So
Yeah.
then you're kind of like, well, shouldn't the player have some say in where they go? I don't know. I can't. It's not like it makes me mad, but I do find it a compelling argument that it's not. Maybe it's not fair to labor to have a draft.
Yeah, yeah, I can see it. Right. So you get the situation dependence of the career outcomes is certainly relevant. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, I remember Eli Manning not wanting to go to the Chargers. Is that right?
Yeah.
That was right. Yeah, and then at the time I thought like, imagine the hubris. But I guess one I can understand that. Yeah, like your career depends on your life depends on how this goes.
Yeah. And man, Eli Manning ended up giving me the perfect villain in Philip Rivers. Like, man, did I enjoy loathing him for a long time.
Enjoy loathing. That's interesting, but I get it.
I mean, I would have hated loathing him. I hated loathing him for a while because he beat us for a while. But then we flipped the script, and oh man, it was fun. Beating the Chargers a lot since Andy Reid came was a lot of fun. Before we get to our anecdotes, here's the interview with Lonnie Hofmann. All right. So, as we promised, we have our special guest. This is Lonnie Hofmann. Chris and I went to high school with Lonnie. By the way, Lonnie, Chris told me to tell you that to say hi, but he also said he misses you and he's regretful that he couldn't be here for this part of the interview.
I miss the Dorster as well. Give him my best regards.
We'll definitely do so. And after this segment, we have a couple anecdotes that we told. We do our weekly anecdotes, and they're about you. So I'll be interested when you listen back to this, what you think about the anecdotes.
I'm not sure if I should be filled with apprehension or excitement, so can't wait to hear what they're about.
All right, so we brought Lonnie on because Chris and I are woefully uneducated about college football. And we have a friend that is very educated, at least about a part of college football. He's a big Ohio State football fan. I would consider him the foremost expert on Ohio State football that I know. And by proxy, he's quite knowledgeable about the Big Ten. So we thought we would ask him some questions now that the draft is over about some Big Ten related draft topics.
And I just want to jump in there. Very kind intro, very complimentary. And informed, maybe a bit of a stretch, but hey, I'm very opinionated. I think that's an accurate adjective, so we'll ride with that.
Well, it's better than anything that Chris and I were able to provide. So let's get into the first topic. The Steelers drafted a wide receiver who comes from a school that I hear you're not very fond of, Roman
Indeed.
Wilson. So the first thing is he was the Steelers' third pick in the draft, and it looks like they've picked him to play slot receiver for them. What are your thoughts on Roman Wilson? What should Steelers fans think about this receiver?
Yeah, so right. Team up north, as Ohio State fans, we don't even like to say the name of that school. They don't like to say the name of our school either. I don't know if they still do this, but during the Brady Hoke era, they referred to us as Ohio and didn't even like put the state on there. So yeah, there's a bit of bad blood. Let's just say that. But so yeah, Roman Wilson. I first heard about this, I was a little surprised he was picked that high, and it's not just that he comes from that school, but I mean, he seemed like a solid receiver, but never a guy that struck fear in me the way that some other, team up north receivers have in the past. Like, for example, Nico Collins jumps to mind. Like, he was a guy that when we played them, I was just, anytime the ball was thrown his way, I was living in fear of like what he would do. Because it always seemed he was just so big, so rangy, and just always seemed to come down with anything that was remotely near him. And so that was a guy I was like, if you told me, okay, he's going to be drafted fairly high, like it could be an NFL player, like that wouldn't have surprised me at all. So Roman Wilson, that context, it's a little surprising. I guess I always thought of him as sort of like a pretty speedy guy, and so maybe that's like, one of his particular positive attributes. But he's not someone I would have thought that would be. You said he was like a third round pick.
Hmm.
That maybe would have been drafted that high. But now that I'm saying all this, I'm sure he'll go and like become a 5 or 6 time All Pro and like prove me absolutely wrong. But yeah, I guess in context, not the team up north receiver uh, of past years that would have like struck me with fear and was seemed to be like an automatic like NFL guy.
Wait, so now I didn't even think to ask you this, but I gotta ask you, what's going on in your head now that C.J. Stroud is throwing to Nico Collins and quite successfully in the NFL?
It's a bit bizarre, that's for sure. I'm not sure if I'm living in some like alternate reality that some sort of Twilight Zone alternate reality sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised it's going so well because they're both. It pains me to say it, but like Nico Collins is a really talented guy, so I'm not surprised that they're having such success together.
So then the next question that I feel like both Steelers and Chiefs fans would want to know, both of them having drafted Big Ten players a little bit later, the Chiefs in the fifth round and the Steelers in the sixth. Why should NFL teams be excited when their teams draft Big Ten prospects? I think there's a lot of buzz when SEC guys get drafted, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on Big Ten prospects versus SEC prospects.
Yeah. So obviously, yeah, I have Big Ten bias. I'm a Big Ten guy
No,
at heart.
what?
Oh,
No.
I know, like it's a complete shock to all involved, but yeah, I don't know. And there's gonna be no factual basis in reality for this take, but like my thought on this is just that guys, especially if you're going to like, I don't know, if you're being drafted by like a northern team, right? Like, or a team where it gets kind of cold at some point in the year, right? Like, if you're drafting Big Ten guys, those boys are used to like playing in like real football weather, right? Whereas like the SEC guys, they got that heat and humidity. It's still super pleasant late in October, November. They gotta kind of get used to that, barring like the Brett Favres of the world that grew up in like Mississippi and just loved the tundra. Granted, he wasn't an SEC guy, but he was a Southern guy. So there's always outliers, but I think the Big Ten boys, they're just used to playing in like real football weather, right? And then there's just like I don't know, some sort of Big Ten mojo. I mean, you hear about all these like sometimes you'll get just a bunch of like 3-star guys out of Iowa and Wisconsin that didn't really like blow you away in college, and then they end up becoming like these incredible NFL players, right? So maybe there's something to be said for like the coaching at some of these almost elite but not quite elite Big Ten schools. So I think if you're drafting Big Ten guys, you're going about it the right way.
Wait, so do you think, what if Brett Favre went to Ole Miss instead of Southern Miss? Do you think he would have been worse in the tundra if he went to an SEC school?
That's a great question. I think old Brett, regardless of his present brushes with the law and sort of shamed his legacy, I don't know. I think he just had a certain like mojo that even with the handicap of going to Ole Miss, he still would have, ended up flinging it around the yard in the wintertime pretty well.
Do you believe, like, I feel like Brett Favre now has a reputation as someone who basically like didn't study a playbook and just went out and kind of winged it. Like, do you believe that? Do you think that's true?
I feel like I really want to believe it's true because it's just amazing. Like, if he never ever studied anything and was like a Hall of Fame quarterback, like that's absolutely incredible. So I want to believe it so much that it's true that I feel like I've just convinced myself that it is, right? Like, he has this anecdote. I don't know if you've heard this one, but there's a YouTube video of him like discussing like various like coverages and like basically I'm gonna like butcher the story. He tells it in a funnier way, but basically the crux of the story is he didn't know what like nickel coverage was until it was like his fourth or fifth year in the NFL or something like that.
Like
Like
they just
it's
keep
basically
saying nickel. I don't know what they meant.
yeah, and it was like yeah, like I guess at that time, yeah, I think like Holmgren was their coach, and like yeah, I think was it Ty Detmer? Was he the backup at that point? I can't remember who the backup was, but like yeah, he was, you know, he was the crisis was like he went up to his like backup quarterback and was like, hey, they keeps the defense keeps calling out like this nickel coverage or like what is that? And they were like, oh yeah, it's like just bring in like an extra defensive back, right? And he was like, oh, that's it. Doesn't affect me. Like, who cares? Like, that was the crux of it. Like, he was like, all right, they can do what they want. Screw it. So yeah, I really hope he never studied a playbook. Like, God, it's perfect.
It's funny because I'm torn between that being such a funny idea and the question of like, does it cheapen my feelings about football that someone would be capable of just being a Hall of Fame player without
Yeah,
studying a playbook ever?
yeah. Makes you think for sure.
All right, now I got another question for you about a famous Ohio State guy,
Yeah.
Mr. Mike Vrabel.
Yep.
I think played at Ohio State. Also went back and
It,
was he DC or was he just like a linebackers coach?
he was the D line coach back.
Oh,
I
D
think it was
line.
just maybe 2 years, like 2012, 2013. I think he was our D line coach before. I think Larry Johnson came in right after him. So he was like our D line coach in the first couple years of Urban Meyer's tenure.
So he then moved on and was the Tennessee Titans coach for a while, and honestly was very well regarded as the Titans coach. And he got fired last year, and the sentiment around the league was kind of had to do more with disagreements with the general manager and or
Mm.
ownership. It was kind of philosophical differences. I don't know that there were that many people that would say that he wasn't doing a good job as a coach. The Titans teams really overachieved. I mean, they played the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game in the 2019 season, and that wasn't like a superstar laden team. So it was interesting then, after getting fired by the Titans, he didn't get hired during this coaching cycle. And I'm just curious, as someone who's a little more familiar with Mike Vrabel, his reputation as a coach, what is going on? I mean, is there more to him as a coach than I know? Are there problems?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good question, and I'll preface this with saying I'm no Mike Vrabel expert, but I have heard various rumors on the Ohio State message board. So, preface this with again, no basis in reality. This is just internet message board scuttlebutt. But first, I remember when he was our D line coach, and I felt like he was a very good D line coach. I felt like he recruited well. He was a good D line coach at Ohio State. I think when Larry Johnson came in, it took us a step up there for a while because Larry Johnson was just kind of like a D line coaching legend, and so is really well regarded for his, teaching technique and things like that. But Vrabel was very good. And then yeah, it seemed like he went on and had good success in the NFL and all that. Um, so I think just in regard to his coaching ability, my like opinion of him was that he was good. The only thing I've heard is, and this is just again Ohio State message board scuttlebutt rumors, is that he can be a bit of like an abrasive guy and like hard to get along with. And so I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it, that he just like rubs people the wrong way and eventually like wears out his welcome. I can think of another coach who is maybe also known for doing that, also from the Big Ten, So that's the only thing I could think of, is that maybe like it's just a personality thing more than a coaching thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, that's true. Actually, I didn't actually make that coaching comparison until you mentioned it, but yeah, that's the only down. I mean, I know. I guess at least the way that I had heard about it, it was framed as like he didn't get along with management, but I didn't know that was being blamed on him. It just seemed like it was a
Mm.
disagreement. I was so sure he would get a job somewhere. I was really surprised. But let's actually pivot to that coach because
Sure.
I am very invested now that that coach has come to my division. And the
Yes.
coach we're referring to is Jim Harbaugh. So just as some background, I don't know how much you're aware, but Chiefs fans always get frustrated because for the last, I'm not even kidding, like we're talking like on the order of like 10 or 11 years, it has felt like every single year in the preseason, there are people that want to be cool and pick the Chargers to win our division. And the
Got it.
Chiefs, I mean, we've now won the division, what, it's like 8 years in a row, I think. Um, so of course, like it's already started. So what should I think about Jim Harbaugh coming to the Chargers and give me validation for the fact that I do not think he's going to do well.
So this may be a shock, and I'm sorry to like burst your bubble, and this really pains me to say this, but because oh my God, I do not like that guy. Like, I can't even emphasize how much I dislike this guy. But that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually ends up being fairly successful. And the only reason I have for this is that he has actually been like successful pretty much like everywhere he's been, right? Like whether it's the NFL, whether it's college, and even, like at the team up north, So recent years, I mean, of course, there's the elephant in the room of like the sign stealing scandal, right? But I'm even talking about prior to that. I mean, team up north was like fairly successful, right? Like, I mean, he came in, after Rich Rod. Was it? Now I'm trying to remember. I guess, or was it after Hoke? Oh, I guess it was after Hoke. That's right. It was Rich Rod and then Hoke. He came in after Hoke. Um, and I mean, they were very respectable. It was like 9-3, 10-2 seasons, right? And they would like lose to us at the end of the year, but like they were a very solid team. So he was again successful, right? Even taking out like the last few years with the elephant in the room. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. He is, I guess, maybe getting a little older. What is he, like in his late 50s now? I can't remember how old he is,
I
but
think he might have hit 60, I think.
yeah.
So,
Although, I mean, I guess that's, by NFL coaching standards, I guess that's not insane. Like how old is Andy Reid right now?
I think Andy Reid's like 64,
Yeah.
65, something like
I mean,
that.
Andy Reid's special, right? But like, circling back, I wish I could tell you that he's just going to go in and just be a complete dumpster fire. Like, gosh, that would give me so much pleasure. Like, you don't even understand how happy that would make me. But I wouldn't be surprised if ends up being fairly successful. Like, I'm not thinking he's going to go in and like win the division. I mean, I think the Chiefs are the class of the division, and it would be a shock if you guys didn't take it. But I wouldn't be surprised if like the Chargers are like pretty respectable under him. Sadly.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I agree with you. So tell me what you think about this theory. I I personally think Jim Harbaugh is someone who kind of will come in, make a team like competent very quickly, like make them a professional team,
Yeah.
and then they'll do well. You know, the weird thing is that the Chargers roster really is not in a good place right now. So it may take him longer than it did because in San Francisco, he kind of brought them to respectability pretty fast.
Yeah.
It was something, I think they went like 13-3 in his first season there and like made it to the NFC title
Yeah.
game. So, you know, I don't think he'll be that successful in his start, but I think the Chargers will turn it around. But I also think that like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not their coach in 5 years. You know, I think
Yeah.
he's going to like come, they'll be respectable, they'll be even good. I don't know if, I mean, it kind of depends on how the Chiefs are, but I'm hoping the Chiefs will remain good to the point that we won't have to like really worry about them. But
Yep.
I think he's going to wear out his welcome and then, because coaching NFL players is different from coaching college kids. You know,
Yeah.
the college kids cycle out every 4 years. The NFL guys are like adults. They're not, once you like scream in somebody's face a couple times, they get kind of tired of it when they're like 30-year-old men with wives and
Yeah.
kids and stuff, you know? So I feel
Yep.
like that kind of works for a little bit, and then they get tired of it. And I'd be honestly, I would bet against him still being their coach in like 5 years.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about that. And the what you mentioned before about, maybe it, making him competent but taking a little while to turn around. I mean, it could be sort of analogous to what he did at Stanford, right? Like when he first came in at Stanford, I mean, they were real bad like the first year, but like, in each subsequent year they made progress until by the end, they were like quite good and like, beating Pete Carroll's Trojans and I guess they lost with Andrew Luck in against Oklahoma State in that I forget which bowl that was, but yeah, I mean they were extremely good by the end of his tenure there, right? So it could be a bit of a more of a slow turnaround like he had at Stanford, but yeah, I agree that he'll probably make them competent. But I also agree that yeah, he does tend to wear his welcome out at places. I mean, I think the team up north was by far the longest he's been at any place, and that just could be it was his alma mater. That they had an extra amount of patience for him because he was the golden child. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. That's for sure. And fingers crossed, it goes real bad. We'll see. No offense to the Chargers, honestly. Like I have nothing against the Chargers, but
We can
you're
give a little offense to the Chargers. It's okay. They have like 7 fans. It's all right. It's nobody will get mad at us. It's
yeah.
okay. Um, so let's do just a couple quick Ohio State questions because I do want to hear you talk a little bit. What in your mind? Who is the like quintessential Ohio State player in your lifetime? Like, who's the guy that represents? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the best player, but just represents Ohio State.
Terry McLaurin, 100%.
That's a
Terry
good one.
McLaurin. That guy be my favorite Buckeye of all time. Like
Really?
he is like for one thing, he's incredibly talented, right? I mean, you see how good he is in the NFL now, and
Yeah.
it kind of was a surprise to a lot of people because he didn't really become like elite at Ohio State until like his senior year, right? And it was a thing where he, kind of like grinded through his first 3 years, and there was kind of the transition to like we weren't super prolific passing wise for a while until his like final year with us, and so then he finally started putting up big numbers. But throughout his time there, he was the ultimate team player. He gave it his all on special teams. He gave it his all at the wide receiver position. He was an incredible blocker. I mean, he just did all these like little things that just endeared him to, his teammates and the coaching staff. And then like finally his senior year, he just like burst out as this receiving weapon while still doing all those other little things. And on top of that, he was just like a hell of a good guy too. Like he was, a captain for us. Like Urban Meyer just couldn't stop like raving about the guy. I mean, it's the same way sort of in DC right now. I mean, like his teammates just love him. I think he's a
Yeah.
captain in DC. And yeah, I mean, I just loved watching that guy. I mean, catch the ball, but just doing the little things. Like there's sometimes I'll just watch like Terry McLaurin just like blocking the snot out of a guy, and it just gives me great, great joy. So yeah, Terry McLaurin, quintessential Buckeye, my favorite Buckeye ever
Interesting. Who's the best Buckeye coach?
of all time.
Yeah.
And it could be, it's not like head, it could be like position coach,
Yeah. Oh
anything.
yeah. Yeah.
It might be Brian Hartline, our wide
Oh
receiver
yeah.
coach. He is, I mean, he's the greatest position coach I've ever seen. Like just in terms of one, actually like teaching guys stuff, but two, like recruiting as well. I mean, he's just like the whole package, right? I mean, when we lose that guy as our wide receiver coach, it's going to be a deeply sad day in Buckeye Nation. He's just absolutely incredible. So for sure, best position coach ever. Maybe best all around coach ever. I mean, it's hard to like give Urban his due because I mean Urban was absolutely like elite for us. But yeah, I think I might have to go with Heartline.
And then finally, last question before we get to your anecdote.
Okay.
Um, what are your thoughts about Ryan Day going forward? I know he's kind of there have been a lot of mixed thoughts, especially when you know had the Cotton Bowl game against the lowly team from Mizzou.
That was yeah, that was a tough game too because yeah, for those folks that don't know, I don't know, you guys may have mentioned this in podcast, but we all grew up in Columbia, Missouri, where the university or Columbia, Missouri, where the University of Missouri is located, and so of course we all have like soft spots for Mizzou, and even I have like a soft spot for Mizzou. So that was a tough game to watch. Yeah, I mean, I liked I mean, I still really like Ryan Day. I'm not ready to like, the last few years have been like super rough, right? Like just, I am of the Ohio State fan vintage where it's like I will take a win over the team up north over anything, over national titles. I would go like 1-11 every year as long as that one win is against the team. Like that's how deeply fanatical I am about beating that team up north. So it has been extremely painful.
I remember you saying right that your favorite team is not Michigan. That's better than Ohio State.
Yeah, I start to question that. Is like, oh, is are the Buckeyes my favorite team, or is not Michigan my favorite team? I see. Oh, and I just there we go. I just said their name. I'll have to repent later on. But
Yeah, what is the repentant? What do you have to do now?
I have to like I have to make an offering to like Woody Hayes as like like ask for forgiveness. So yeah. So anyway, I mean, losing to them, these last few years have been super rough. Of course, there's the elephant in the room with the cheating scandal. A lot of people, true believers on the Ohio State message boards, are like, okay, the team up north today is coming. The NCAA is going to bring the hammer down. They're gonna, have sanctions. They're going to have wins taken away. They're going to have titles taken away. I really want to believe all that, but I'm honestly not sure if that's actually going to happen or not. And if, it's the Ohio State message boards have been known to work themselves into a tizzy before about stuff that hasn't, come to fruition. So if that ends up happening, I think like that, like, the team up north gets really harsh sanctions. I think all is basically like forgiven for Ryan Day. It just chalks it up. These last few years have just been an anomaly, right? Like, you were dealing with this, super in-depth cheating operation and, look at the results. Like the NCAA, brought the hammer down, right? So like who can blame the guy? If that doesn't happen, like he doesn't turn things around now, like it has to be this year, right? I mean, like Harbaugh's gone. They lost, players to the NFL, new coach. They lost a ton of coordinators. If we don't beat them this year, it's going to be really hard to not think of like Ryan Day being on the hot seat, right? Like
Yeah.
and on top of that, we have so many guys coming back. I mean, there was a concerted effort by a lot of draft eligible guys to come back this year and like have one
Yeah,
more
like
go.
who should have been a chief this year, Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah.
I was
Sorry
personally
about
offended by that one.
that. I sincerely apologize from Buckeye Nation. So I like him. I think there's a lot of you know stuff that still needs to shake out, but I think this year is kind of like a must-win year against the team up north, right?
Yeah,
If it doesn't happen this year, like I don't know, like you know how it looks going forward for Ryan Day, to be honest.
makes sense. All right, and we've got about 6 minutes. Do you think your anecdote will fit in 6 minutes?
Sure. And I was like trying to think of like so many high school anecdotes that I'm just not thinking of right now. But like actually the anecdote that came to my mind I think was like post high school. Because it goes to our other favorite sports, which is tennis. And I don't know if you've mentioned this on the podcast. Have you mentioned about how big of a Roger Federer fan you are,
No, I don't.
Ajay?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, we both are. It's now been brought to light to the world that we're both very big Roger Federer fans. And one of my was so I think this was 2009, right? So like the Roddick Federer Wimbledon final was summer
Yeah,
of 2009, right?
yeah.
And I remember I think we were both, so this is a little post high school. I apologize for this. I think this is,
No,
like
no, that's
college.
it wasn't restricted to high school. Any anecdote
Okay,
is
good.
fine.
Just
Yeah.
an anecdote. Perfect. But I remember like going over to your house to like watch this match. And I remember going into it and being like, Andy Roddick, like Federer owns this guy. He's going to sweep it. It's going to be straight sets, no problem. This is just going to be a great day. And then Andy Roddick proceeds to play like greatest match of his life, and it's just like going, back and forth. Like I'm nervous, like Federer is not going to pull this out. And on top of this, your lovely brother Sachin, who I love the guy. He's a huge Rafael Nadal fan for the listeners out there, who is taking great joy in Andy Roddick, like just going toe to toe with Federer. And I still have nightmares to this day of Roddick winning a point and Sachin annoyingly clapping and calling him Roddick the Clutch. And oh my gosh, I was so frustrated. Luckily, Federer ended up pulling that out in a classic match, and the saving grace of it all was I remember your dad coming down and like making us or suggesting we take like a photo in front of the TV, like a Federer's win, and he made Sachin get in there with us. And so I can't remember like the photo, but I think it's you and me just like beaming and Sachin like grudgingly like standing off to the side. And so all the Roddick the Clutch stuff, got his comeuppance in the end. Sorry, Sachin, but
That
yeah,
is,
that's a strong memory for me.
man, I have to see if we can find this photo. This would be so funny
I
to
feel like it's
post.
there somewhere. It's got to be there somewhere. I remember
Oh.
like the photo getting taken, so I would love to see Sachin's face again.
Yeah, if we can find this photo, I will put it up on our Instagram at
Perfect.
STCF715. We will post it.
Fantastic.
That is
Fantastic.
amazing. Oh yeah, that was. I mean, it ended up being a good day, but oh boy, was that stressful. Little did we know. And
So
we
stressful.
were riding such a high because Federer just won the French Open for the first time, and we
I
were like, oh, and
know.
we got Roddick in the Wimbledon final, like this, and it's going to be his 15th major. He was going to pass Pete Sampras.
Right. Yep.
Sampras was in the crowd. That was a crazy.
Oh.
Oh man, and we were like, is he going to blow this? Like, what? How is Roddick
Yeah.
playing the best tennis he's ever played in his life?
The clutch.
Oh man.
It all ended. All's well that ends well, luckily. But I was
Yeah.
real nervous there for a long time.
All right, Lonnie. Well, thank you so much for making the time, coming on, and giving us a little bit of insight on the Big Ten and Ohio State. Please come
My
back.
pleasure.
Yeah, look, we will have you back anytime we need to talk Big Ten, or honestly, if you want to talk about anything, just let us know, and we'll bring
Perfect.
you on.
I would love to come back. I love the podcast. You guys are doing a fantastic job. And yeah, anytime you want some uneducated, uninformed commentary, I'm absolutely your guy. I'm proud to be loud and uninformed. So just whenever you need that, let me know.
Oh, we can always use it. It fits our brand, that's what we do.
Fantastic.
All right, and we will now cut to Chris and my anecdotes. But thank you so much, Lonnie.
Thank you.
Well, should we get to anecdotes?
Yeah.
Well, do you want to go first?
Sure. So my story is from, and I'll probably have to run this by Lonnie to make sure I'm remembering this correctly. But my memory of this was our junior year of high school. after our AP US history exam. So, like, in our high school, the AP tests were in the morning, and they were not at the school. I believe we did most of them at like a retirement home that was like a 20-minute drive from the school, 15-20 minute drive, something. So we would like go there in the morning. I think some of them were in the afternoon actually, but this test I'm pretty sure was in the morning. I know it was in the morning because so we took the AP US history exam, and then a bunch of us went together to get lunch afterward. And there's this place in Columbia, I don't know if it's still there. It's called Buckingham's, which is like a barbecue place.
Yeah.
And so we went to this barbecue place, and we're all going to order. And part of the reason why this story is funny is because it's very quintessentially Lonnie. And I'm realizing since our listeners, by this point, you will have seen an interview with Lonnie. So maybe you'll find this more entertaining because you'll have seen some of Lonnie. But he was going to order, and Lonnie, he takes his food seriously, as one should. I do too. And so he was pretty indecisive about what he was going to order, and we kind of went around the table, and he had his eye on this 4-meat platter. And so finally he goes to the waiter, and he's like, well, I haven't really decided, but I think I'm going to get the 4-meat platter. And he was like, okay, so what meats do you want to get on them? And he's like, and he was like, I'm going to get beef. And then he like pauses, he thinks about it. And like, you know how it gets kind of awkward when like the way you do, like, I'm someone that feels like a lot of time pressure when we're making someone wait, and he was just like, okay, well, beef, and then the second meat I'll do beef, and he pauses another like 5 seconds, and I'm like really getting anxious at this point, and he's like, you know what, I'll do another beef, and beef. He takes that whole time to get 4 orders of beef on the 4-meat platter. And,
I remember that. That's like, yeah.
Just quintessential one.
Do you remember what it looked like? Was it just like a plate full of? I don't remember what it looked like when it came. I just remember him saying this.
The side of toast and I think beans or something, and it was just like beef, like piled up in his plate. And I mean, there's no way I can recount the story that will do justice to what it was like, but I just remember finding, even as anxious as I was with the time pressure, I just remember laughing so hard because it was so quintessentially Lonnie. It was so funny.
Yeah, it was. That is my. At least that is so quintessentially my image of Lonnie. beef, and beef. Yeah. Well, I hope the beef was good. I don't even remember asking. This is, I guess, less of an anecdote, more just like a memory, a general memory. But do you remember his prom outfit?
Oh yeah, yes, I do.
I can't remember what was it. So it was a white tuxedo with a white top hat and white cane. But what was the complementing color? Was it red?
Red. He had a red vest, and it wasn't even just a tuxedo. He had like coattails. Like,
yeah, he had
a white tuxedo with coattails.
Yeah, I remember him like thinking about it, and like he brought it up, like, should I do it? And then I think we were like, yeah.
We were like,
there's no way he would do it, right? And then he did it. Yeah. And I think I have a picture somewhere of like me and his top hat with his cane, but I could not pull off the full ensemble.
I have one with me and his top hat and cane too. I think I'm like using his cane like a pool cue or something. But
is he still? Did he rent these or did he buy? Because if he still has them,
I think he rented it. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. If he could like show up on the podcast in full tux, that would be awesome. Anyway, yeah. Well, hopefully, listeners will be able to judge whether these images of Lonnie that we have remembered are actually reflective of who Lonnie is nowadays. But I will not be there. But I hope it's a good time, or I hope it was a good time. I guess because it's in the past.
It's in the past.
And yeah, tell him I said hi, or I hope you did tell him I said hi.
The listeners know right now whether I told him that you said hi.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, thanks to everyone who's been following in whatever way that you follow. Please follow us on our various social media platforms at STCF715, and we're on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for the support. We do have a show next week, do we?
Yeah, yes. I'll be around next week if you'll be around next week. The week after I'll be traveling.
Okay, so we'll have a show next week, and we'll try to cook something up for you the week after. We'll see. It probably won't be a full show, but something entertaining, hopefully. If you find the rest of this entertaining, then you'll probably find that entertaining. If you don't, you may not.
You probably hate it. No. Okay. Well, this was fun, and yeah, we'll talk next week.
All right. Until next time.